Yep. Go right ahead, Angela.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. My name's Angela Hummel, and I'm currently getting my doctorate at Iliff. I also am an aspirant, and I'm a member of St. John's Cathedral. And I have been awarded a grant through the National Episcopal Office to work on this idea of thinking through colors about theological ideas and spiritual ideas. And I'm really delighted to have you all here. I'd love to first meet you all. If you could say your names, and I would love to know what inspired you to take this, if it's just that you love the idea, or if you are in ministry and you're looking for ways to reach people in new ways. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. So I'm just going to go ahead across the screen as I see it, and hopefully it won't move. um, Kathy?
Hi, yeah, my name is Kathy Thaden, and sorry, I was joking about the Sharpie. I'm an artist in residence right now through the Grand County or Grand Junction Public Library. So I'm at my residency studio where I have a lot of mosaic supplies, but that's about it. So I am looking forward to this, and just any way to express the divine creation in art speaks to me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was just in Grand Junction doing a retreat yesterday. That's great. Wonderful to see you. Ed?
So we'll be in Grand Junction next week also.
Yeah.
So it looked like an interesting topic. I'm with St. Gabriel's Archangel in Cherry Hills, and it looked like an interesting target or topic. And we have a lot of artwork that we display on in our hallway and stuff. I don't have much artistic talent, but I can appreciate the artistic talent of others.
Well, welcome. It's great to meet you. For those just joining, we are doing some introductions, but if you want to grab any art supplies, you can do so really quickly before we begin, if there's something you love to work with. But if you don't have any of that handy, you also can just use your computer. So whatever your preference is. Becky?
Hi there, I'm Becky Beal-Moore. I'm a parishioner at Good Shepherd in Centennial. I know Diane since she's a member of our parish, but she's also on staff at the Office of the Bishop. I wanted to join this workshop because I'm continuing to be intentional about stretching my muscles in different and new ways. So that's why I'm here today.
Great, welcome. Nancy?
Hi. I go to St. Aidan's Episcopal Church in Boulder, and I'm really happy to be here. I think it's anytime my friend Candace actually was the one who noticed it. So at her suggestion, I'm here, and I'm glad I am. I'm an artist, and I'm also a student at Front Range. I want to become an art therapist. I think art is a wonderful, freeing way of expressing oneself, and it's enjoyable to look at usually. So I'm glad to be here, and thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Ah, great. Thank you. It's nice to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Cameron?
Hello, I'm a parishioner at St. John's, and I enjoy art, and I'm kind of in the process of like exploring my spirituality. So I thought this seemed like a really cool opportunity to use art to continue to explore my spirituality.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. Pamela? Oh, you're on mute. You're muted. There you
I'm
go.
Pamela Nielsen. Cameron, it's nice to see your face. We just connected this morning about a ride to Grand Junction, so I'm looking forward to it, and we'll have lots of things we can talk about too then. I was just fascinated by the topic. I worked with Kim McPherson at the cathedral for years with the youth, and she always used art in such creative ways, and I was always very envious. So it just seemed like a wonderful subject, and I'm really anxious for the learning that we're going to be having here.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. Georgina?
Hi, I'm Georgina Lucas. I'm from St. Thomas, Denver. And I'm a very literal person and a linear thinker. And I love art, but I'm not able to reproduce it. So I thought this would be helpful to stretch me a little. I need some stretching.
Great. Well, welcome. I'm so happy you're
Okay.
here. Chuck?
Hi, my name is Chuck Theobald. I'm at Grayson St. Stephen's in Colorado Springs. My mother, for her career, was an art therapist, and I'm familiar with art therapy as both diagnostic and therapeutic. And I was interested in hearing more about how it connects us to the divine. So thank you for offering this workshop.
Yeah, you're welcome. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Craig?
This is well outside my comfort zone. I am an engineer, a problem solver, a troubleshooter, and I'm very self-critical, so I have never been good in art. But I have recently taken up the flag of STEAM, S-T-E-A-M, which is science, technology, but A being art as a methodology with my scout units to teach people to express in many ways. So my art may be very different from a lot of other people's, where, for instance, I will appreciate a 1955 Chevy as art rather than being able to reproduce art. So this is going to be challenging for me.
Okay, well, welcome, welcome. I'm happy to have you here. I don't think it's going to be as challenging as you all think. I'll just put that out there for you all, just to try to alleviate these nerves. The whole point is not to create great art or be a great artist, which is debatable what those even mean anymore, but it's to think differently and to pray differently. So I hope that alleviates some of those anxieties. Janet?
I'm Janet Strickler. I'm in Longmont at St. Stephen's in Longmont. And I've been the artist in residence at St. Stephen's for almost 20 years. So I have done a lot of art related to spirituality over the years, but also teach art for people who are not artists. And so I encourage all of you who think I'm not an artist to just not worry about that. And I apologize for being late. I'm also a volunteer naturalist, and I guess I still have my name tag on. I just ran in the door from doing a program outdoors about the tall grass prairie. So I was so tickled to see this as a topic for a diocesan workshop.
That's so great. Great. Well, welcome. Diane, did you want to say anything?
Oh, sure. I chose to be the Zoom host for this workshop because I am interested in it, similar to Becky, wanting to stretch my muscles, as you will. And I'm interested to hear what you have to share with us. So thank you, Angela.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did I miss anybody? Like I said, sometimes the boxes move. Is everybody there? Okay. I think we've introduced everybody. Great. Well, let's get started. So welcome. The first thing, and we only have an hour, so I want to just we're going to do a very quick, this is going to be very quick. Usually I take a lot more time with all of this, but I'll start with a couple of things. The first is that I have a bachelor's and a master's in theology, and my experience in ministry and in teaching and learning theology is that it has this tendency to be very argumentative for people. And I wanted to find a new way to talk about God and spirituality and topics of faith and spirituality that not only helped us have different kinds of conversation, but also help us to connect with one another more deeply and could create more equity. As a teacher and a facilitator, the way I see this, we all came into this space with a lot of wisdom and knowledge. And I want to honor all of that wisdom and knowledge that we've all brought in. We're all going to learn from each other. I am a collaborative learner, and this space is a collaborative learning environment. And so the very first thing that we're going to do is what I call there's a technical term that I try not to use when I'm doing ministry, but it sounds like a couple of you might be interested in this, in being ministers yourself and serving people. But I have people create color lexicons. And what I mean by that is a lexicon is like a certain particular kind of vocabulary. It's about certain words and how you use them. You know, for different languages, you have different lexicons, and it can be very different what we mean by different words. So take, for example, those of us who grew up Christian probably know that the Greek word logos translates to word, right? And we know that when we hear that part in the Gospel of John, we often, you know, the things that come to mind are the word is Jesus, the word is scripture. If you look up an actual Greek lexicon and you look up the word logos, there are pages and pages of meanings. And I've often thought about how ever since I was a little girl, I remember when I was very young, and I looked at my dad and I said, do you think when I look at green and you look at green, we're seeing the same thing? And I've often thought about that over the years. And I think in some ways, objectively, physiologically, there are ways to prove that there are some things that we're looking at that are very similar. But I'm really interested in your unique perspective. What do you see when you see certain colors? How do you think and feel in color? And so because we're short on time, I'm just going to invite you to think of 3 colors. And think of like your 3 favorite colors. And then what you're going to do is just, you can take either, I offer people to do this a couple different ways. The quick and easy way is to do something like this, where you just take a piece of paper and you take your primary color categories that you think in, but right now you're just going to take 3 because we are limited on time. You put them on the side and then you just write whatever comes to mind when you think of that color. The other way you can do this, if you know that you're going to want to come back to this later, you can also just give it a whole page, give it more space, and write as much as you want about that color. So for example, when I think of the color red, and this is like a brain dump. If you've ever done Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, she talks about brain dumps in the morning where you just write and journal unfiltered, right? So I want you to do that with these colors, whatever comes to mind. So I'm going to give you an example. When I think of red, I've got Valentine's Day, hearts, love, passion. Oh yeah, anger. I realize it's a symbol for anger. The devil was always depicted as red when I was a child. Then I remembered that in India, red is the color brides wear, and it means luck. Energizing, that I remember hearing that it's very energizing, so you shouldn't put it in your bedroom if you're having a hard time sleeping. All of those things, every association you can think of or meaning that these colors have for you, you can go ahead and put that down. And then it's interesting because some of the colors, I tell people to start with their favorites, but then if you go through and you write, like I put down the color orange. And as I was writing, I was realizing I have like this visceral bodily reaction towards orange when I think about it. And I did the brain dump and I realized decades ago in college, I had 2 friends get into this huge argument about the psychology of the color orange. And it stayed with me all these years. And I also remember learning that McDonald's and Burger King use orange because it's supposed to make you hungrier. So I had all these negative associations with the color orange, but then I continued the brain dump and I realized, but I love Van Gogh's sunflowers and there's these beautiful, gorgeous oranges in there. So you just want to put down anything that comes to mind. You're just gathering your wisdom. And I just want to give you a couple of minutes to do that. So go ahead and pick like 2 or 3 colors and what do they mean to you? And while you're doing that, you go ahead and keep working. I'm going to talk a little bit about this color thinking. There are a number of books recently, this one by Victoria Finley. And then I was in Scotland recently, and there was a book on the cultural history of color that I found. Then there's this book you might have seen, The Secret Lives of Color, where the author traces like the history of certain colors and how we use them and how we found them and the different meanings that different cultures have for them. And then there's this book that just came out this last year, The Art of Color. There's a lot of people who are reflecting on the stories we all carry culturally and personally around color. And so just want to give you a minute to really think about how you think in color. What do different colors mean to you? Now, the hard part is we're not in person. And so I can't be walking around to kind of see how everybody's doing and how it's coming along. If you have questions, please feel free, like raise your hand and, you know, either the virtual Zoom hand, or you can just raise your physical hand, just start talking and asking me. But also let me know where you're at. How many colors have you created and written about? And if you're doing this on your computer, you can open up a Word document or a Pages document, depending on what you're using for software. And if you open up that document, there's ways to go and create images and then fill them with color. So you can go ahead and do it that way too. How many colors do we have so far? 1, 3. Great. Okay. How about this? I'm going to give you just like 2 more minutes. And if you are done with the 3, you can add more if you want to while we're waiting. I just want to check in. Is anybody struggling, or are you doing okay? And does everybody have 3 colors? Okay, did anything surprise anybody? Were any of you surprised at anything that came up as you did this brain dump? Yeah? Anybody willing to share with the group? Yeah, Craig. Craig, you can go ahead and if you want to share. Oh, you're muted.
It won't let me screen share.
Oh, okay.
I was going to share.
Well, hold on,
So-
Craig. I can let you screen share. Hold on a second. Go ahead.
Great.
Nice.
So
And
what's
it's interesting
surprising
because
about it?
as I thought of the colors, I didn't think of the words, I thought of the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
The first color, I remember laying on the lawn, staring up into the sky when I was a child, and just loving to look at a blue sky. Now, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so it didn't happen a lot. Green is one of my favorite colors because to me it's life. It's I study biology, so I think of plants and microphylla and the ocean and living and growing. And then there's a word in there that's very nerdy, and I apologize, but petrichor is from Doctor Who. It's the word meaning the smell of cut grass, oxygen. And then red, the one that surprised me as I was thinking about it, because red is one of my favorite colors. Energy, danger, heat, but also I grew up in a fire family. It means protection. It means life saving. So I just, and then I laughed at myself because of course I'm a computer nerd. So I picked RGB, red, green, blue.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else surprised at what came up? Or feel compelled to share with the group?
I don't mind sharing.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, I don't know. I'm just gonna hold it up and see if you guys can see it.
Yeah.
But it's in my hand, so it's kind of hard to read. I put green is spring, young, new, fresh, or there should be a comma there. Fresh, birth of newness. So it's like all like new and vital. I like, the life image. It's just like this new, I don't know. I love green. It's one of my favorite colors. It's also the color of my eyes. Blue is holy. I put mom because, and there's a story behind that. My mom had ovarian cancer. And while she was ill, before she died, I got bluebirds. And then after she died, I kept getting bluebirds. And it was really weird. So I associate blue with my mom who passed away, who I loved dearly. And safe, blue is safe. And it's also powerfully comforting. And then purple is yummy and passionate and grape. It's like rich,
Yeah, that's great.
Put rich on there too. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
what I hope you're noticing, everyone, is like both Craig and Nancy had two colors that were the same, but different things come to mind when they think of those colors, right? And yet some things were similar. And did anybody have the favorite color orange? Does anybody love orange? Usually whenever I present, I've got somebody who it's their absolute favorite color. And when I share that orange story, they're like, that's my favorite color. But I think it's a good example of how, again, we look at things differently sometimes, and we have different reactions, and we have different associations with different things. And it's really important to understand those perspectives and where we're coming from. And those are things that we know, but sometimes we're not always very mindful of them or consciously thinking about it. And when we think in color, it invites us to think more about those kinds of things like perspective. So now I'm going to invite you, and again, we're kind of rushing. Normally what I would do is I'd have all sorts of materials in front of you right now, like markers, paints, different kinds of paints, watercolors, acrylics, construction paper, all these different things that would be before you. And I would invite you to think about which one you're gravitating towards. And I want you to think about what is the color of your very first idea of God? What color would you give your very first idea? And it might not, for many of us, it's not a clear memory. It's like a vague feeling. And there might be certain associations with it. But try to think of the very first time you remember thinking about that idea of God. And if you were to give it a color, what color would it be? And then go ahead and color it. And you could just fill your page with it. So like you can take a new color and just marker it. You could take your computer and just do a screen fill of the color. But I want you to create the color in some way. And sometimes what's helpful is to journal first or after. This is, I think Georgina was talking about not being a linear thinker. This is very circular thinking. And so I want to invite you, if you get stuck and you're like, I don't know what color that is, just journal for a bit and reflect on, just try to like do a brain dump again about the very first memories you have of God. And are there people associated with it? Is there a church person? Is there, whatever it is, just do a brain dump just until all the stuff starts coming. And you'll notice once one thing comes, usually several will come, and then try to give that a color. but maybe the color came automatically. And then as you're creating the color, more thoughts and more associations might come up. And so I would invite you to then journal them and just keep it going back and forth between creating the color and journaling about all those memories and associations you have that about that first idea of God, that the reasons why you picked that color. Nancy, did you have a question?
I'm sorry to keep bugging you.
Oh, not at all. You're not bugging me.
I'm all like, ooh, 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 So, can it be more than one color? Can it be like just a color that's created out of a series of colors, or?
Yeah, well, and this is where I would say, I've noticed as I've been doing these workshops across with different parishes in Colorado, it's funny because they're always like, I need a different hue. Like at first I've only brought in like the primaries. And I've done my best to get like these huge boxes of crayons that have so many different hues. If you need a different hue, you go to the hue that you need. Like however you can create that color, go for it. I've also had people who have said like, I don't know that it is just one color. You'll find I don't have very many rules around it. Mostly the reason I try to say pick one color is I'm trying to simplify the process for you. But if you think of another color, go for it. Yeah. If it has to be, if you're like, it has to be these two colors together, yeah, then that's what you got to create.
Thank you.
Yeah. How about this? When you are done, you've made your color, you've journaled about it. Could you give me a thumbs up in your screen? Great. That's great, Craig. Find the hue that you need. Yeah. Sorry we don't have any music. I didn't think of that beforehand. How to bring the music into the computer. I don't know if you have any music, Diane.
Well, what's something you would like? I can try and find something.
Oh yeah?
Sure.
Oh, just something instrumental.
Okay.
Bach or Rachmaninoff probably is good. And we're just going to take a couple more minutes. There we go. You still hear me?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just turn it off.
Okay. I think we're going to give everybody like 2 more minutes. Welcome back. I'm going to go around and I'm going to give you all the opportunity to share your color. And here's how we're going to do it. If you would rather not say anything, you can just say pass. If you would like to just share the color and not say anything about it, you can just hold up the color or do a screen share. If you want, you can tell us a little bit about your color and why you chose it and what it brought up for you. So everybody clear on how we're gonna share out? And you've got several options there. I want to make sure you're comfortable. You definitely don't have to share if you don't want to. So let's start with, I'm going to start from the bottom of my screen now. Pamela, would you mind going first?
No, I don't mind going first. I don't know that you can really see this very well, but my color is light blue and I did it in a swirl. And the reason for that is that as I was thinking about it, my very first experiences were at church, and they were, I just always have loved Jesus welcomed the children. And I associate that with probably the painting or whatever that was used, and that he was wearing a light blue. And I think of that as this robe and surrounding the children, surrounding me with this light blue. And I also think about the light blue of the sky. And as I think back, that's probably where I place God in my probably 4-year-old mind. So that's what I came up with.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Chuck? Oh, there we go.
My color is hard. The image that came to mind when you were describing, think of the color of God, was actually the portion of the Sistine Chapel where God is reaching towards Adam's hand in the moment of animation. And while all of that is very colorful, the hand, Adam's hand and God's hand, are both kind of a pale pinkish gray. And I spent some time trying to get my computer to create that, and said, everybody has this image in their head. It's better to see that yourself than it is for me to actually find the color that it is in my head. You can have it in your head. But that was the color that came to me, was that moment before animation.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chuck. Georgina? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, the immediate color that came to mind was gold. I didn't have that here, but I made swirls with my yellow highlighter, similar to what Pamela was describing. And so initially the color was gold. I mean, the color gold came to me before anything else, the minute you gave us that assignment. And then I thought white, and it was kind of clouds. And then I thought, well, above the clouds is blue. And so those three colors kind of came together. And God for me was kind of amorphous, not a whole body, but amorphous and over everything. And it brought me right back to the pew in my little Roman Catholic church that I grew up in as a little kid. And I just envisioned myself as a little kid sitting in the first or second pew. And so it brought back all of that to me.
Thank you so much. Kathy?
I also had gold, kind of a bright, warm yellow, of a place of love and safety in the distance, like, the saying of heading for the light when you die. Well, almost like that, this bright gold, warm, safe place in the midst of kind of a murky mystery. I mean, this, I'm talking grade school, so that's about as much as I can nail it down, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Becky?
So when I was little, the way things were described to me is that God was like this old man. That's what all the pictures, somebody else talked about pictures on the wall when you were at school. But so I know it was just to think of him that way, but it really, to me, the color is, well, I did try to color white, but it's this color. It's white, kind of transparent, more like pure energy kind of, but I don't know that I could have described it that way as a very, 5 or 6 year old kid, but that's always been my view of God, I think.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, doesn't really have a color. It's kind of the absence of color because it's all of it, but I guess white is all colors, right? When you
Yeah.
think about it as an energy, but that's in my mind what it is.
Great. Thank you so much. Nancy?
Hi. So I don't, I don't remember exactly. I think I would need a little more time to kind of try to access how I saw God as a child. I grew up, I'm like a cradle Episcopalian. So I grew up, with, going to church and, exposed to the church and, and so I always kind of had, believed in God and, had that in my mind. But I guess the best I could do today was, this is just kind of how I see it, is to me, God is all color, like the rainbow, and diverse as he is the creator of all people and life in nature. So I hope this doesn't frustrate anybody because I know this is not what the assignment was, but I said comforting like a hug, light shining in the middle, warm. And this is what I did. I'll show you what I did. This is the back of what I did before, so ignore that. But you see what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very Hildegard of Bingen.
Pardon me?
It reminds me of Hildegard of Bingen, this 12th century mystic that I talk about a lot in one of my workshops. But
I should Google her.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cameron.
So this is what I did, like blue, but like bunch of different shades of blue.
Yeah.
Because I guess when you first said like your childhood memory, I remember thinking of my dad grew up Baptist, so I remember thinking of going to like Sunday school at my grandparents' church over the summer and them talking about like the River Jordan and like the importance of water and spirituality. And then like I was briefly Catholic, so like holy water. And then I grew up on a lake in Michigan. And when you like live on a lake all the time and it's horribly cold most of the year, you like pay attention to the water a lot to see what the weather is like. And it's kind of this spirituality of water, and that like water, God is ever present but always changing. So I kind of have just like flowing water in different shades because every single day lakes look different.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I love that you brought in the different shades and the lines too. That's fantastic. Thank you. Janet.
Well, I didn't get home in time to grab art supplies, so I just thought about it. But it would have been a hard thing to record a color anyway. When I was a little girl, till I was about 9, we went to a St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Boulder. And that church the sanctuary has clear story window. It's an A-frame, and there's clear story windows right along the ridge of that. And so there's light like coming into the sanctuary from those and reflecting off of whatever dust motes are in the air or something. So what is that color? It's like white, but sort of a warm white. And the sanctuary has big stone wall right behind the communion table. Well, it was really big when I was a little girl. I thought of it as this massive stone wall. I went back there a few years ago and it was considerably shorter, but I'm 6 feet tall. But there was a big stone wall and it was a planter. So there were always plants growing right behind the communion table in the sanctuary, lit by that light. So it was something about the light coming in and falling on the plants was, I figured that light was God coming into the sanctuary.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I would love to see how you would represent that on paper. Another time though, right? Ed. Ed?
Yeah, I had
Oh, there we go.
Then I saw one of my cats getting up behind me. So I thought of the color yellow, like with the sun and warmth. Thought about protection, light, and illuminating. So it was a way to, I think it's very similar to what Janet was talking about, where you can see the light come in and it inspires you to think about different things and consider other alternatives on different aspects.
Great. Thank you. And Craig?
So you're going to be excited because my first thoughts were of when I was, I think, 12. Now you'll find this funny, but as a cradle-born Episcopalian, I've literally been a cradle-born Episcopalian, but the moment that I actually said the words accepting Jesus Christ into my life is when I was 12.
Mm.
And I remember where I was. I was at a camp, and I was out in this beautiful field out in the sun. And so I was kind of a combination of surrounded by the light of outside and the warmth and the experience. And then as I thought about how I have felt when I have felt the presence of God, it's always been warm. So, if I may, my color that I chose is a combination of a yellow, reddish, goldish mix, which is an orange. There you go.
Yeah.
And I purposely did what I did here in that it filled and surrounded all my other thoughts, because that was the way my image of God is this all surrounding. But then as I thought about it, this was not complex enough, because God is just not a simple color.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my image of orange, of God.
Mm. That's great. Thank you so much, Craig. Diane?
Sure. I'd like to figure out how Craig does all that drawing, for sure. But the first part of the brain dump for me was, like someone said earlier, gold, beige, and lightness.
That wasn't drawing, that was Google search.
Okay. Well, that part I got. So basically gold, beige, just lightness. One of my colors is blue, and so that's sort of mixed in as well, kind of like Craig did. And for me, just Angela, I'm just so grateful the opportunity to open up to do something like this, to, really incorporate it into my praying, is the use of color, or even just using the color that I'm imagining for God in my prayers. I mean, I'm so excited to go there, and I don't want to go there yet.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, and I would encourage you, I'm going to grab this really quick here. I would encourage you all, if you want to work more with this outside of the time that we have together, you can paint it or create it or do more with this. And the other thing I want to just say about it is, as you paint this is, I showed you my initial color was gray. And then when I painted it, what I realized was this painting, it really symbolizes some good and some kind of negative things about that original color, that original color association. So for example, my first image, when I first got the idea to do this, I actually was creating a series of paintings of my images of God over the years. And I had tried to paint the very first actual representational figurative image. And it was this old man in the sky, long gray beard, and sitting on a cloud in judgment. And what I remembered as I was doing my brain dump is I remember my mother teaching me the Our Father. I remember somebody teaching me that God, the creator, loved me unconditionally. And that's where you see the flecks of white coming in. But I also was like kind of awestruck by this mystery of this being that created everything. And that's where you see the darker flecks. Kind of seemed cold and removed. And so I just want to encourage you, as you paint it, it's interesting what comes up even more as you try to create it. Especially, there's something somatic about it, where when your body is actually going through that motion of painting it, different ideas come up, different questions come up. And I would just encourage you, if you want to try to create it, don't worry about being an artist. This is not about great art. This is about thinking differently, and just pay attention to what comes up for you. We're going to do one more quick thing to this. So now I want to invite you to think about, when did your idea of God first change? And how would you symbolize that with a color and a line? And then you can decide if you want to add it. And I'm going to say this before you get started. I want you to think about, if we had time, we would also be doing like lines, like just how we did with colors. And I would be inviting you to think about, what do lines bring up for you? Like, what kinds of emotions and associations do different? If we had more time, this is what I would give you all. And then I would have you write out what these different kinds of lines have associations for you. And I want you to lean into the abstract. And I'm going to say this because I used to hate abstract art. I used to think that everybody after Van Gogh was not even really art. I was very much a snob and very close-minded about this. I really was convinced like it was just crap. I wanted nothing to do with it. And then I was fortunate, a couple decades ago, I was at an exhibit of Georgia O'Keeffe's, and I was like, oh, there's something actually in this that I have been missing. And I started doing some more research into abstraction. And I read something by Vasily Kandinsky, who is considered one of the very first. I consider Hilma af Klint the mother of abstraction. If anybody knows art history, you'll understand why I'm being so adamant about adding this point. I see some thumbs up. But Kandinsky was one of the first to do abstract painting. And his comment about it was fascinating to me. He said, I had to turn to abstraction because I wanted to say things about the spiritual that couldn't be said through words. He was trying to say something new about the spiritual that had not yet been said in words. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. Now, if you've ever been to the Clyfford Stills Museum in Denver, it's very interesting. But at first I hated it because Clyfford Stills took away all the names of his paintings. He just gives them numbers. And he would tell people nothing about his paintings. He wouldn't want to name, he didn't want to tell you anything about it. There's a story that is somewhere in the museum, or it was the first time I went in there. There was a story that they had up about this woman is staring at one of Clyfford Stills' paintings. And she turns to him and he's like, what's it about? He goes, what do you think it's about? And she starts telling him all this stuff. And he goes, well, you just told me a lot about you. And he was like, he kind of had this like, he didn't want to talk about his work. And when I first went into that museum, I was at a loss until I walked into this room and the curator had put up one of his very first paintings, then one of his mid-career paintings, and then one of his really abstract paintings. He had this progression where he went from very figurative, realistic paintings and moved into abstraction. But what was so incredible is the curator had put up this wonderful description of vital lines. Clifford Stills had these vital lines in all of his artwork, and the curator was showing how the line was always there in all of his work and what that meant, this lifeline. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, now I understand your work, right? Like, I think abstraction is what it does is it creates conversation. It helps us talk about it, right? Like, this would probably be nothing. It might mean nothing to you. But when I start telling you that this has something to do with my first idea of God, and we start having a conversation about our ideas of God, like, if we had more time, I would love to talk more. Like, Georgina had made a comment that resonated. I also grew up Roman Catholic. I know that picture of that old man with the long gray beard was in one of my childhood early Roman Catholic churches. And how does that influence us in negative and positive ways? We are having a different conversation. When I painted the actual old man, it was too limiting. It didn't hold the huge mystery that I'd actually been introduced to as a child. It didn't hold the unconditional love that I'd been taught. So I love how abstraction can hold all that complexity and paradox. So I want to invite you to lean into the abstract for a moment and only think about your change in your idea of God in terms of a color and a line. What would the color be, and what would be the line that you would symbolize for that first change in God? And I'm going to give you an example because sometimes this is harder for people. Let me show you. Can you see the line?
Yes.
What would you say it is? Is it anything? It's just a line. It's just a line. I'll tell you more about it later, but you can see the gray is still there. And now there's this brown line in there, and it's very abstract. And I want you to think about what would be your color and line to represent the first really big change to your idea of God that you remember. If we look over the course of our lives, there's probably been many, and we could do this for days. We could probably sit and do this activity together, and we could create a whole masterpiece together. Like, we could create a whole series of paintings, but today we've only got time to focus on this one. So just think about, you can do the first time your idea of God changed. You could just take the most significant change. But I want you to think about, what would you symbolize that change with? What color and line? And then, do you want to add it to your first? Or do you want to create another piece and put it alongside the first? Whatever you feel so inclined to do, I want to give you time to do it. And I'll give you a couple more examples. One of my participants one time added it to their first one. And all they did was added a little tiny pink circle to, they had taken a canvas and filled it with the first one. It was like this huge black canvas. They made the whole canvas black. And then they added, when they talked about their change, it was this tiny little circle in the lower right-hand corner. Another participant in a workshop said the change was so significant, they took their second color and just covered the first color. There was such a significant change. They completely took their canvas that they'd painted that first color on, and then they just swept it with, like, just covered it. We'll talk a little bit about what that means, but I want to invite you to just do what feels instinctually the right thing right now. And then give me a thumbs up when you're done.
About how many minutes, Angela? I can do some music again.
I know we've only got like 15 more minutes, right?
Correct.
I don't want to rush you all, but how's everybody? Are you pretty close, or do you need more time? Close? Yeah, I see some thumbs up. I think we'll wait with the music then.
Got it. And Angela, if you would later, I'm pretty sure we would all love a list of all those books you showed us.
Sure, yeah.
And
I
if
know
you-
I am putting together a bibliography because I've been getting this request from people. So what I should do is just email it, and then if we have everybody's, do we have everybody's emails?
Yes, if you email
Probably
it,
send it out.
I will email it to all of them.
Yeah.
That sound okay?
Yeah. No worries, Craig. I see your message down there. No worries at all. Okay. Is it okay if I move you out of that space? You're probably going to want to take more time with it later. You can keep going also as we move through this, but so let me tell you a little bit about these examples before you start sharing yours. With the two participants I told you about, the first one who added the little circle in the corner, she said her first image of God was so beautiful and wonderful. It held so many wonderful memories for her. And when God changed, it was very significant. It was very significant. But that first initial idea of God and God's love was so overpowering, like she could just put this little circle in there, right? The second participant said that the first image of God was actually really awful. They'd been taught that God was so judgmental, and it was very painful for them to remember it. And when God changed, it was when they actually were introduced to the idea of Jesus and Jesus's forgiveness. And that forgiveness was so powerful that they were like, I just want to cover that canvas with a new color. I know what's underneath, they said, but I want to cover it with this whole new color, which was the whole process of them painting over that first color was actually really healing for them. And I'll share with you with mine, that abstract line is actually, now if I can find it, it actually represents Jesus. And for me, the most significant change was when I was introduced to the idea of Jesus. And if you look closely, you'll see there is a chin, there is a neck, there is a shoulder and a chest. And right here, it's like, I know I've rested my head there, but if you asked me what color his eyes are, I have no clue. I have no clue what color his hair, but that I know I've rested my head on his chest. You know, it's like I have that personal, intimate relationship with God because of how I was introduced to Jesus in such a powerful way. And I wanted to combine it with the gray, but I made a series instead. And I made the second one, the gray got a lot softer. I don't know if you noticed that. And then that brown line was just like, it's very abstract, but it was symbolic to me. But I'd love to hear from you now. What were your changes and how did you symbolize them? And did you add it to your first one or did you create a second piece? And I'm going to open this up. Let's see, we'll go around again. And again, you can pass if you want to, or you can just show us what you created, or you can talk a little bit about it. Let's see. Okay, no problem, Craig. Ed, do you mind if we start with you?
Unmute. So I kept the yellow. I don't have yellow, so I couldn't draw it. But I kept the yellow, but I have a wavy diagonal line going through. And then in the foreground, off to the right, I have a kind of a figure of a person looking at the wave going across, observing it. So you take it as either, I take it as me looking at the wave going across to see how it changes with time. Or you can say that it's God looking and seeing how I'm going, hopefully, and I'm going up, which I think is a good thing. Or I have a line going up, so I'm more optimistic. I think if I had it going down, it'd be more pessimistic.
Okay, thank you. Janet, would you mind going next?
I didn't have any colors, so mine is just lines. And I have at the top. See if I can get it to focus. Come on, it's having trouble with the light.
It's so
Maybe
hard.
you can, maybe you can highlight the,
Bottom one.
highlight her and it might come in a little better.
Yeah, you can see the bottom one. The top one was just rays, that light coming from through the roof of the church. So it was those single straight lines, like one directional. And then at the bottom, it sort of became one long continuous line that kept bumping into each other. And then wherever it bumped into each other, there's a something, there's a dot there in this case. So I wouldn't say that was my first, new idea about God. That's more reflective of maybe my current idea about God, but it was fun to draw.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Diane, do you want to share?
No, I really didn't get to work on that part. 'Cause we were
Okay,
talking.
no problem.
But thank you.
Yeah, Cameron.
Yeah, so I added this to my previous one where I kind of added this. It shows up as red on the screen, but it's like kind of a dark pink of where I kind of, went to church a lot, but like I didn't really connect to it. It always felt very judgmental. And then I have this kind of balloon moment where this is so cliche, but my university, we had the Gideons and they would like throw Bibles at people. And I ended up like, I'm never good at saying no to people. So I ended up with like 3 of them. And I was like flicking through and I found like the verse, like, we love because God first loved us. And that was so profound to me at like 19 years old. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I kind of had that start, I guess, of like my journey of becoming like a more like practicing Christian. So it took a long time to kind of get there. So like it kind of shrinks back down and then goes off and then starts to expand again in the distance. But I think that was kind of my big change of like, God isn't necessarily there to be like, you're never going to be good enough. More like God is there to always love you. And that was kind of the start of my personal faith journey.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love these. I love this so much. I learned so much from everybody when we do this together. Thank you. Nancy, would you like to go next?
Hi, sorry. I had definitely not enough time to do all this, but I've made kind of a big how do I even describe this? So my version of God, the way I looked at it was like, so it was kind of off in the distance or something. Like it was there, but it was like not quite as personal or it was personal, but it wasn't as intimate maybe or something. I'm not finding good words. That's typical of sometimes when we're expressing emotion. That's why art therapy is a really awesome thing, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here it is, far, far away. And then there was, I don't know if you can see, there's like a transformation. There's like the little bitty far off thing. And then boom, here it is. I feel okay kind of touching on this in this group. I am in recovery. I'm a recovering alcoholic. So there was a point in my life when, I got sober and like I had reached a really, low place in my life. And I went into recovery and I think my relationship with God became more sort of personal and more intimate, more present. Like it wasn't that God, there's a sign on a wall somewhere that says, if you don't feel close to God, guess who moved? You know what I mean?
That,
so it's like God never went away. God was always there, but it was like I kind of was just out there, like, you know what I mean? And then when I was able to get a clear head and allow myself to access God more fully or more personally to me, then God was like, boom, right here. I'm here. I'm right here,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what this is, I guess, is that, it just, God became more, I keep having trouble with like the angle here, but you can see it. God became sort of more in the present with me because I was more in the present with me and with God, if that makes any sense.
Thank you so much. These are so compelling. I wish we were in person and I could see them. Like, this is great. Thank you so much.
And I could keep going with this. This is one of those things you could just do for like all day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you so much for sharing and being so vulnerable, Nancy.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Happy to be.
Yeah. Becky, would you like to share?
Sure. So you may recall I had said before that my color was kind of more white or transparent, kind of representing pure energy. And so when you had said you can keep it or you can start afresh, I was going to just start afresh. And I thought, you know, that pure energy is still there, but probably a big shift in my understanding of God was instead of being more kind of linear, directional, it's kind of more holistic. And so I took and more warm. So then I took like a yellow and just made kind of big, all sorts of different squiggle lines all over, because it's real. God is much more expansive than just kind of one direction or even kind of a more curvy, specific line. And that's how to me, represents kind of a more holistic relationship with God.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to share it with us or no?
I would be happy to share it with you, but I don't know that you're going to be able to see it. So it would be, I don't know if the camera will do it. Hold on. That's it there, but it's not liking it. Hold on. Maybe it will look.
You'd have to turn off your blur background for it to show.
Oh, probably. Anyway, it's not,
okay.
it's not very big. It's just,
That's
it's
okay.
squiggles. It's just yellow squiggles all over the square that I
Yeah.
made the white. So
Thank you for describing it so well. It's intriguing to me. Thank you. Kathy.
So that initial idea of the warm gold and yellow, kind of distant in the murky, mystery, not really an aha, but an evolution, and a lot like what has already been described, but that this warm, loving yellow gold energy was now no longer in the distance, but everywhere present. And part of that was, if it had to be a line, it would be spiraling out, including everybody, everywhere, everything, which, if there is an aha, it's realizing that is how much God loves everyone and everything, and not just me. Or if God loves everyone and everything that much, then I guess I'm part of that too. So it's just this all encompassing.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Georgina. Oh, you're on mute. You're muted. That's okay.
Sorry. I did another, I just happened to have a piece of scrap paper that was all gray and black, and I made these kind of things that look like a curtain.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, it was a dark curtain when I chose to leave the Catholic Church, and I was kind of a late bloomer with all of this. I was in graduate school, and one day I was listening to the sermon and saying, this just doesn't resonate with me, and I left church and didn't have a church for 6 years. And so it was like I didn't know who God was or the role of religion in God, and I felt quite lost. So I was trying to kind of get through this curtain to find out what was behind it. So that was kind of the major shift for me.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we only have 1 minute left, and Diane said it might end quickly. Let's go quickly to Chuck and Pamela. I'm so sorry to rush you both. Do you want to share quickly?
I'm going to pass on this one.
Okay.
My vision changed from very concrete to very abstract, and I'm still working through it.
Beautiful, though. Thank you for sharing that. Pamela. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you.
One of the
There we go.
changes, so I used my blue spiral, but one of
Oh,
the changes that happened was I was reading a poem by Mary Oliver, and I don't remember the exact words, but talked about how possibly instead of death being dark and black and all, death is absolute light. And it started me thinking about God, and that God is light and not death or dark. So that's what I did. And then my friend sent me a picture of the moon this morning. And I love the way that the moon is there. And then there are the four sections of rays that flow down. And then I see God as just being a spiral.
Yeah.
And I can move up and down in my beliefs.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for this. It's been very
Yeah.
interesting and
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thank you all for sharing. I love this so much. I love meeting everybody that I've gotten to meet through these and getting to know you all. And I seriously can't thank you enough for how much I've learned from your sharings. It's been so beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Diane, thank you so much for hosting. I'm sorry we went a minute over, but
It's okay. It's okay.
sorry to
So-
rush you all at the end, but
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
okay. I don't want you to go away yet.
okay.
Just so you know, as you know, here, I'll stop the recording now.